Listen up. While the masses worship celebrities and chase validation on social media, there have always been men who operated on a completely different frequency. Men who didn't need permission, didn't seek approval, and changed the world precisely because they refused to play by society's rules. Today, we're going to do something that might blow your mind. We're going to analyze three of history's most influential figures through the Sigma male lens: Jesus Christ, Albert Einstein, and Nikola Tesla. And before you dismiss this as clickbait, understand this: the Sigma archetype isn't some internet invention. It's a pattern of behavior that has existed throughout human history, demonstrated by men who prioritized mission over recognition, substance over status, and truth over popularity. These weren't men who joined the alpha hierarchy and fought for position. They were men who created their own path, often in isolation, often misunderstood, and almost always ahead of their time. They possessed something that can't be taught in any self-improvement course: an unshakable internal compass that guided them regardless of external pressure. If you're serious about understanding what it truly means to operate as a Sigma male in a world designed for conformity, then hit that subscribe button right now, because this channel cuts through the surface-level garbage and delivers the deep psychological insights that will actually transform how you move through the world. We don't do fluff here. We do philosophy. We do strategy. We do truth. Let's decode greatness. 1. The Sigma archetype decoded. Before we can determine whether these three titans of history fit the Sigma profile, we need to establish exactly what we're talking about. And let's be clear, the Sigma male isn't some fantasy character from a movie. It's a psychological and behavioral pattern observed in men who operate outside traditional social hierarchies while maintaining significant influence and self-sufficiency. The alpha male seeks dominance within the hierarchy. He needs the group to validate his position. He thrives on social competition, visible status symbols, and public recognition. There's nothing wrong with this. Alphas have driven human progress for millennia. But it's not the only path to impact. The Sigma male, by contrast, exists parallel to the hierarchy rather than within it. He doesn't compete for social position because he doesn't value it as a primary metric of success. His validation is internal. His goals are self-defined. His power comes not from controlling others, but from absolute mastery over himself and his chosen domain. Here are the core characteristics that define the authentic Sigma archetype. First, strategic independence. The ability to operate effectively without relying on group consensus or institutional approval. Second, selective social engagement, choosing when and how to interact based on purpose rather than obligation or fear of missing out. Third, mission-driven focus, organizing life around meaningful work rather than status acquisition. Fourth, non-conformity rooted in conviction, rejecting social norms not for rebellion's sake, but because they conflict with deeply held principles or more effective approaches. Fifth, comfortable solitude, viewing alone time not as loneliness, but as essential fuel for creativity, reflection, and deep work. The Sigma doesn't announce his independence, he simply lives it. He doesn't argue with the hierarchy, he ignores it. While others are networking, climbing, and politicking, he's building. While others are seeking permission, he's executing. While others are performing for an audience, he's refining his craft in obscurity until the work speaks for itself. This is crucial to understand. The Sigma archetype isn't about antisocial behavior or toxic individualism. It's about recognizing that the traditional path of seeking approval, climbing corporate ladders, and competing for social status often distracts from the deeper work of creating genuine value and living according to your own principles. Now, with this framework established, let's examine whether three of history's most influential figures demonstrated these characteristics. and more importantly, what their lives reveal about the power of operating outside conventional social structures. 2. Jesus Christ, the ultimate non-conformist. Let's address the elephant in the room immediately. Analyzing Jesus Christ through any modern framework requires careful consideration. For billions, he's the Son of God, the Messiah, a figure of worship. But if we examine the historical accounts of his life and actions purely through a behavioral and psychological lens, setting aside theological debates, what emerges is a profile that aligns remarkably with Sigma characteristics. Consider the context. First-century Judea operated under a rigid social hierarchy, Roman occupation at the top, religious authorities controlling spiritual and social life, and everyone else scrambling for position within that structure. The expected path for a religious teacher was to gain approval from the Pharisees, work within the temple system, and build influence through institutional channels. Jesus did the exact opposite. He didn't seek endorsement from religious authorities. In fact, he consistently challenged them, calling out their hypocrisy and performative piety. He didn't establish a headquarters in Jerusalem, the center of religious power. Instead, he operated from the margins, Galilee, the countryside, wherever the mission led him. He didn't build a traditional organization with hierarchy and titles. His inner circle included fishermen, tax collectors, and social outcasts, people who had nothing to offer in terms of status elevation. Look at his strategic solitude. Before beginning his public ministry, Jesus spent 40 days alone in the wilderness. Not networking, not building alliances, not crafting a marketing strategy. He withdrew from society to clarify his mission and strengthen his internal compass. Throughout his ministry, he regularly retreated from crowds, even at the height of his popularity, to spend time alone in prayer and reflection. This is textbook Sigma behavior, using solitude not as escape, but as strategic preparation. Recognizing that external noise, even positive attention, can distract from mission clarity. His teaching method was revolutionary. While religious leaders of his time spoke from positions of institutional authority, quoting precedent and tradition, Jesus spoke with personal authority. "You have heard it said, but I tell you." He didn't need the validation of credentials or references to other rabbis. His authority came from internal conviction and the power of his message itself. Consider his relationship with power structures. When they tried to make him king by force, he withdrew. When they tried to trap him with political questions, he reframed the entire conversation. When they offered him worldly kingdoms, he refused. He wasn't interested in operating within existing hierarchies or replacing one power structure with another. He was introducing an entirely different paradigm. His closest followers didn't always understand him. He was frequently misinterpreted, even by those who loved him most. This is another Sigma characteristic, being so far ahead of conventional thinking that even allies struggle to grasp the full vision. The Sigma doesn't dumb down his message for approval. He trusts that those who are meant to understand will eventually get there. The ultimate demonstration of his non-conformity, he chose execution over compromise. When given every opportunity to play politics, to moderate his message, to work within the system and save his life, he refused. His mission wasn't negotiable. His principles weren't flexible based on circumstances. He maintained his course knowing exactly where it led. Now, whether you view Jesus as divine or simply as a historical figure, the behavioral pattern is undeniable. He operated with complete independence from social hierarchy, pursued his mission with unwavering focus despite opposition, and ultimately changed the course of human civilization, not by seeking power, but by embodying a truth so profound that it couldn't be contained by the institutions of his time. This is what separates authentic Sigma behavior from mere contrarianism. Jesus wasn't different for the sake of being different. He was different because conformity to existing structures would have compromised the mission, and the mission was everything. 3. Albert Einstein, independence over institution. Picture this: a patent clerk in Switzerland, completely outside the academic establishment, working on physics problems in his spare time. No laboratory, no research grants, no university position. Just a mind that refused to accept the limitations of conventional thinking. This was Albert Einstein in 1905, his miracle year, when he published 4 papers that fundamentally revolutionized physics. 4 papers that would each have been worthy of a Nobel Prize on their own. And he did it while working a day job that had nothing to do with academic physics. This is the Sigma approach in its purest form. Don't wait for institutional permission. Don't delay your work until you have the right credentials or the right position. Identify what needs to be done and do it, regardless of whether the establishment recognizes your authority. Einstein's relationship with academia perfectly illustrates Sigma independence. After his groundbreaking work, he did eventually join the academic world, but always on his own terms. He accepted positions, but never let institutions define his thinking. When universities tried to constrain his research or demanded he focus on more practical work, he simply ignored them. When the Prussian Academy gave him a position specifically so he could work without teaching obligations, he thrived. When they later tried to control him, he left. His famous thought experiments, visualizing himself riding on a beam of light, imagining falling in an elevator, required no laboratory, no equipment, no approval from peers, just deep, solitary thinking. While other physicists were fighting for access to equipment and funding, Einstein was revolutionizing our understanding of space and time, using nothing but his mind and a notepad. Consider his appearance. While academics of his era maintained strict professional appearances, Einstein became increasingly disheveled as he got older. Uncombed hair, worn clothes, sometimes no socks. Was he unaware of social expectations? No, he simply didn't consider them relevant to his work. This wasn't rebellion for attention. If anything, the unique appearance brought unwanted attention. It was genuine indifference to status signaling. The Sigma doesn't dress to impress. He dresses functionally. Einstein once said he didn't want to waste mental energy deciding what to wear when that energy could be applied to physics. Every choice was filtered through the lens of mission relevance. His most productive periods came during solitude. After his first marriage deteriorated, he lived alone for extended periods, completely absorbed in his work on general relativity. His second wife understood that his work required isolation and gave him the space he needed. This wasn't antisocial behavior. Einstein enjoyed conversations with other great minds, but he recognized that breakthrough thinking requires sustained, uninterrupted deep work that social obligations constantly threaten. Look at his response to fame. After winning the Nobel Prize and becoming a global celebrity, Einstein was increasingly uncomfortable with the attention. He gave speeches because he felt obligated to use his platform for causes he believed in: pacifism, civil rights, Zionism, but he didn't seek the spotlight for ego gratification. In letters to friends, he complained about the constant intrusions, the expectations, the way fame distracted from his actual work. This is a crucial Sigma characteristic. External validation, even positive recognition, is viewed as noise that interferes with mission focus. The work itself is the reward. Public acclaim is, at best, a tool to amplify messages that matter and, at worst, a distraction. Einstein's relationship with quantum mechanics reveals another Sigma trait: willingness to stand alone on principle. When the physics community embraced quantum uncertainty, Einstein spent decades challenging it, despite being increasingly isolated in his position. "God does not play dice with the universe," he famously said. He might have been wrong. Current evidence suggests quantum mechanics is correct. But he followed his convictions regardless of consensus. The Sigma doesn't require agreement. He requires truth as he understands it. He'd rather be wrong while thinking independently than right while following the herd. His political independence followed the same pattern. He opposed German militarism, fled Nazi Germany, supported civil rights in America, criticized McCarthyism, advocated for nuclear disarmament, always taking positions based on principle rather than political convenience or group affiliation. The FBI maintained a massive file on him, considering him a potential security threat, precisely because he couldn't be controlled or predicted by normal institutional pressures. Here's what made Einstein a Sigma rather than simply an eccentric genius. His independence wasn't accidental or unconscious. It was strategic. He deliberately structured his life to maximize time for deep thinking. He deliberately avoided commitments that didn't serve his mission. He deliberately cultivated relationships with other independent thinkers while maintaining distance from those who demanded conformity. He once wrote, "I live in that solitude which is painful in youth but delicious in the years of maturity." This is the Sigma evolution, understanding that the path of independence isn't always easy, especially when young and still calibrating to social pressure, but recognizing that authentic autonomy becomes increasingly valuable as you mature into your mission. Einstein didn't need the institution to validate his genius. His work spoke for itself. And when the institution finally recognized him, he didn't let that recognition change his fundamental approach to life and work. He remained, until his death, a man who operated by his own compass, regardless of external pressure or praise. 4. Nikola Tesla, the lone genius. If Einstein represents strategic independence within the system, Nikola Tesla represents what happens when a Sigma completely refuses to play the game at all. And the results were both spectacular and tragic. Tesla arrived in America in 1884 with 4 cents in his pocket. He briefly worked for Thomas Edison, the alpha of inventors who understood innovation, business, and networking. The two were fundamentally incompatible. Edison built teams and leveraged hierarchies. Tesla worked alone, visualizing entire systems in his mind with such clarity he could construct complex machines without drawings. The split was inevitable. During the War of Currents, Tesla could have played politics, built alliances, compromised. Instead, he doubled down on the work itself, trusting that superior technology would win. Technically, he was right. AC power triumphed and now powers the world. But personally, he lost tremendously. Tesla's solitude was extreme, never married, claiming celibacy enhanced mental clarity, lived in hotels with minimal possessions, worked in isolation for days, sometimes forgetting to eat. His only regular social interaction was feeding pigeons in the park. But examine his productivity during these periods: AC motor and power distribution, radio technology, X-ray imaging, Tesla coil, wireless power concepts, over 300 patents. This is the double-edged sword of extreme Sigma behavior. The solitude that enables unprecedented creative output can disconnect you from the social reality needed to translate vision into lasting impact. Consider his financial disasters. Sold his AC patents for relatively little. Tore up a contract that would have made him the world's first billionaire because Westinghouse's company was struggling. Why? Because Tesla cared about the mission more than personal wealth. Noble, but practically devastating. He repeatedly diverted investor funds to bigger projects than agreed upon. When J.P. Morgan discovered Tesla was using money intended for wireless communication to experiment with wireless power for the entire planet, Morgan pulled funding. Tesla couldn't understand why. To him, the bigger vision was obviously more important. This is where the Sigma must develop enough social intelligence to navigate reality. You can operate outside the hierarchy, but you cannot completely ignore it if you need resources from within it. His later years became increasingly isolated. He died alone, in a hotel room, in debt, with his final work confiscated by the FBI. Yet he never compromised his vision for approval. never became bitter enough to stop working, never prostituted his talents for easy money, never simplified his message for mass consumption. Was this stubbornness worth it? Tesla represents an extreme. Learn from his fierce independence, his refusal to compromise on technical excellence, his capacity for sustained solitary work. But also learn from his mistakes, his inability to communicate with funders, his dismissal of business realities, his isolation so complete it became dysfunctional. Tesla died poor, but left a legacy that powers the modern world. He died alone, but inspired generations of independent thinkers. He lost every business battle, but won the technical war. The question isn't whether Tesla was a Sigma. Obviously he was. The question is, what kind of Sigma do you want to be? 5. The common thread of strategic solitude. 3 men, different eras, same pattern. Look at how they all used isolation, not as escape, but as a strategic tool. Jesus withdrew 40 days before his ministry. Einstein required uninterrupted thought for his theories. Tesla worked alone through nights. Their breakthroughs happened in silence, away from the noise of society. Then they re-engaged with absolute clarity about their direction. They all could have climbed hierarchies and gained tremendous social position. They refused, because status required compromises that would dilute what they came to do, so they operated parallel to the system instead of within it. The mission was non-negotiable. Every one of them faced massive criticism. Jesus was executed. Einstein was mocked by established physicists. Tesla was dismissed as mad. None of them recanted. None softened their message. The external pressure couldn't shake their internal compass, because that compass was built on something deeper than opinion. They were all ahead of their time, and that created isolation. Their contemporaries couldn't fully grasp what they saw. Jesus preached radical inclusion in a culture of exclusion. Einstein visualized what contradicted centuries of physics. Tesla imagined technology that didn't yet exist. Being ahead isn't romantic, it's lonely. But notice they weren't hermits. They engaged strategically when it served the mission. Jesus taught crowds. Einstein corresponded with physicists worldwide. Tesla sought funding, but they said no far more than yes, protecting their time and energy for what truly mattered. Here's the ultimate proof. The institutions that opposed them either faded or had to completely change. The religious hierarchy that crucified Jesus doesn't exist. The academic establishment that mocked Einstein had to rewrite textbooks. The business titans who dismissed Tesla are footnotes while his inventions power civilization. Their ideas became immortal while the hierarchies became history. This is the long game of Sigma existence, not immediate approval, but lasting transformation. They bet on immortality over popularity. They won. 6. What modern Sigma males can learn from history's greatest. So what do these 3 giants teach you? First, understand that solitude is power. Not isolation born from bitterness or social anxiety. Strategic withdrawal to do deep work that changes everything. In our distracted, hyper-connected world, your ability to disconnect and focus might be your greatest competitive advantage. While everyone else is networking and posting and seeking validation, you're building something real. Second, you need to pick your mission and then protect it ruthlessly. All 3 defined their purpose and never wavered. Every decision filtered through one question: does this serve the mission? If the answer was no, they said no. Doesn't matter how attractive the opportunity looked or who was offering it, the mission was everything. Third, develop an internal compass stronger than external pressure. You will be criticized. You will be misunderstood. People will call you crazy, arrogant, antisocial. If you require external validation to maintain your course, you'll compromise at the first storm. Build your certainty from within, based on principles deeper than opinion. But here's the critical nuance. Being right isn't enough. Tesla was technically correct about almost everything. He still died poor and alone. Einstein and Jesus understood that you need enough social intelligence to translate vision into reality. You can operate outside the hierarchy, but you can't completely ignore it if you need resources from within it. Balance independence with strategic engagement. Fifth, play the long game. Immediate success means conforming to current paradigms. Lasting impact means being willing to be misunderstood now for vindication later. Maybe much later, maybe after you're dead. Can you accept that timeline? And finally, choose your version consciously. Tesla went extreme and paid a personal price. Einstein balanced independence with engagement. Jesus accepted martyrdom for his message. There's no single right approach. Only your approach, based on your mission, your tolerance for isolation, your timeline for impact. The Sigma path requires sacrifice of comfort, approval, sometimes wealth and personal happiness. But these three prove the world desperately needs men who think independently, who create rather than consume, who lead without needing permission. Real transformation doesn't come from within the hierarchy. It comes from outside, from individuals operating by their own compass. You're watching this because something in you recognizes this truth. You're tired of playing status games. You're tired of seeking permission. You're ready to trust your vision even when others can't see it yet. That's the Sigma awakening. The question isn't whether you're a Sigma. The question is, what will you build with that independence? What mission is worth the sacrifice? What future are you working toward that others can't yet perceive? Answer that, and you've joined the lineage of history's greatest. Now stop watching and go build something that matters. So here's what we've uncovered. Jesus Christ, Albert Einstein, and Nikola Tesla, three men separated by time, culture, and profession, yet united by a fundamental Sigma characteristic. They operated outside the traditional hierarchy, pursued their vision with relentless focus, and ultimately changed the course of human history, not by seeking power, but by embodying purpose. They weren't trying to be Sigma males. That's the point. The Sigma archetype isn't a costume you wear or a performance you put on for social media. It's a natural orientation toward independence, deep work, non-conformity, and mission-driven existence. These men demonstrated that true influence doesn't come from climbing the social ladder. It comes from building something so profound that the ladder becomes irrelevant. The lesson here isn't to compare yourself to these giants. It's to recognize the pattern. When you prioritize your mission over your image, when you embrace strategic solitude over constant networking, when you trust your internal compass over external validation, you tap into the same psychological framework that has driven history's most impactful individuals. The world needs more men who think for themselves, who create rather than consume, who lead without needing a title. The world needs more Sigma males operating at their highest level. If this resonated with you, if you're committed to this path of authentic independence and purposeful existence, then subscribe to this channel and join a community of men who refuse to settle for mediocrity. We're just getting started, and the insights coming in future videos will take you even deeper into the Sigma psychology. Now go out there and build something that matters.